Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes. This day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? Boy, do we got the liberty tonight, just when you think things couldn't get worse. One thing you can't say is that when it comes to badness, some people, not all, you know who the good ones are and you know who the persuadable ones are on this LNC, couldn't get worse. They were like, hold my beer. They could. We'll get into that. Before we do, I didn't fix this graphic yet, so you're just going to have to put up with my shitty graphics. But subscribe. It's down there somewhere. Hit the subscribe button. I have been growing steadily, and I have really appreciated it. You can follow me on Twitter. I just reached 34,000 subscribers. Would love for that to just explode. That is Karen Ann Harlos. And actually, I think limiting most of my posts to the LP is holding me back from getting more followers. Some people are like, oh, boo-hoo, if you aren't in the LNC, no one will care. No, I think actually people will care a little bit more, because if you think I'm mouthy now, imagine me without a leash. I don't think you'd like it. The ones who like me on a leash, because there's a lot of things I don't say because it wouldn't be appropriate to say. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And I need to somehow add to this graphic that I do have YouTube memberships. So the member only videos or member preview videos that you get on Patreon, you also get as a YouTube member, and probably going up tonight is the sneak preview of the next episode of Jurassic Dictionary. And boy, do I have a great word for you guys tonight. It's just like, it's so perfect that I can I pinch myself. It is so perfect. And yes, we did get 19 to 21 inches of snow in Colorado. It's been something. So, hey, Emily, I'm glad that you are here. So what is going on? There is a lot to talk about, but I do want to remind everyone that super chats matter. And unless it's an obvious, obnoxious question just meant to troll, any question that gets accompanied by a super chat will definitely get answered, though I generally answer all questions, but I'm going to start to get to a point where I need to be more serious about monetizing my stream. And super thanks certainly matter as well. So tomorrow is my trial, or as I like to call it, my hanging. I was hoping it was to be a public hanging, but the alleged, I say alleged, but not really alleged. I mean, there was a vote. The secretary pro tem, who still doesn't know what a majority is. You would think after I mocked him one time for not knowing what a majority is, he would have actually learned what a majority is. But no, in announcing the results, he screwed it up again, just in a different way. Like, I could see messing it up one time, but not twice, and then in a different way than you screwed it up the first time. Okay. I know I'm funny like that, but I think being able to know what a majority is like such basic knowledge that should be required of a secretary. But, you know, what do I know? I also think the purpose of a political party is to support its own candidates. So, you know, I'm a little nutty like that. I'm a little cray-cray like that. So tomorrow at 5 Eastern, I can send you the link. And Mike, thank you for the super chat. I'm gonna put this up on the screen for a snow shovel. That should be for Wayne for beers for operating the snow blower up and down the street. But we are snowed in. We are basically snowed in. We had to cancel our Douglas County meeting yesterday. So if you didn't, just go to the public LNC list. But if not, you can email me at Karen. Pink Flame of Liberty is easier to remember. pinkflameofliberty@gmail.com. I'll send you the Zoom info. And Chuck said something, and I agree with him. Chuck says, I think if they don't do the trial in open session, we should consider doing a live stream presenting our whole case on video this week. We're on. Anything that's not privileged information. And I don't think there's anything in our defense that's privileged information. I have never been a leaker, and I don't intend to start now. But anything that's non-privileged, yes, absolutely. So, Adrian, who doesn't know what a majority is, Adrian, quote, I have no idea what a majority is, unquote, Malagon, sent out an email just declaring it was going to be an executive session. Well, I hate to tell you guys something, and Chuck might disagree with me here, or he may be able to offer some insight. I think it being an executive session is against our bylaws. Now, I know what they're going to argue. They're going to argue it's a personnel matter. Electeds to other electeds are not personnel. They just aren't. You could try to twist yourself into some kind of weird pretzel to make it so, but that will be obvious to the membership. I am not personnel. I am an elected officer. I am not personnel. But I have some things that are actually, you know, when a bylaw is perhaps ambiguous, what does Robert say? You try to ascertain the original intent wherever possible. Well, it turns out that this bylaw about executive session was only passed in 2020. So it's not too difficult to ascertain the original intent. And Chuck Moulton happened to be on that bylaws committee, if I remember correctly. I might be remembering wrong, but I'm going to pull up on the screen here the portion of the 2020 bylaws committee report. That's not it. That's not it. Well, first let's look at the policy manual from that time. Okay, so the policy manual at that time said executive sessions. So this is 2020. The LNC may enter into executive session only in compliance with this special rule of order. The motion to enter executive session must list all reasons for doing so. If the list of reasons is solely comprised of the identified topics listed below, a majority of the LNC members voting is required for passage. Legal matters, potential, pending, or past. Regulatory and compliance matters, potential, pending, or past. I kind of would consider those the same as legal, but contractual compliance, personnel matters. Now, that parentheses tells you what they mean by personnel. The type of people who are evaluated, compensated, hired, or fired. That's not the same as removal of an elected. So we know what personnel matters means because the LNC back then told us what it meant. And I am not personnel. And if they want to try to hide behind legal matters, don't do anything illegal and there's nothing to worry about in a trial. Don't libel me. And don't do anything that's civilly actionable. And you're fine. Like, how hard is it not to do something that harms somebody? You know, truth is an absolute defense against libel. If they think they are acting in the utmost good faith, they should have nothing to worry about with some kind of potential libel if they're telling the truth. And I know some people will go, oh, but we can't afford it. Well, that's not my fault. It's not my fault you can't afford it. I can't afford it either. And the fact is, we all know who would be writing the pleadings. And it's not that there's anything wrong with this. And I'm not threatening anything here. I just want an open trial that the members could see. But we all know that there are several attorneys on the LNC, and Angela is a skilled paralegal that most of the work would be done by LNC members. How do I know that? Because even though I don't know what's going on presently with the trademark case, we won a Sixth Circuit appeal. Do you want to know who wrote almost everything in that? Now, obviously, it was reviewed by an attorney, it was corrected by an attorney, and it was signed off on by an attorney. But I did the work on that case. And here's how you know. Go look at the FEC reports and see how much we spent on legal fees. I know people think it's a lot. It's like $30,000 or $40,000. Then go Google how much it costs to prosecute a trademark case. And you'll read that it's about $300,000. Now, there's a big difference between the two. What filled in the gap? The volunteer legal work put on by members of the LNC, namely myself. So don't tell me you can't afford it. Don't libel me. And there's no issue. But look what was on this list. Board self-evaluation. Now, if that was currently in the bylaws, I would say this qualifies for executive session. Removing somebody is definitely board self-evaluation. Strategic issues, only those requiring confidentiality. Negotiations, potential, pending, and past. Okay, so that is what the policy used to be. And then there was a bylaws amendment. Let's pull that up. And here it is, but why? So it's adding that executive session may only be used for discussion of personnel matters, which we've just shown what that means, contractual negotiations, pending or potential litigation, or political strategy requiring confidentiality. And here is the rationale. Executive session is when a meeting is conducted in secret. This proposal would adapt the LNC's current policy on executive session, which we just read, elevate it to the bylaws, and apply it to other LNC created committees. It would also take the reasons which the LNC policy manually currently allows for executive session called by a majority instead of 2/3 for anything else, and make those the only permissible reasons. In other words, only the 3 that required a 2/3 vote are the permissible reasons. Board self-evaluation is not one of them. We know what this bylaw means. So according to the principles of interpretation of Roberts, this trial cannot be an executive session. And in fact, having it in executive session, I would say, violates my due process rights to be able to have accusations against me and me to be able to defend myself to the electorate that I represent, not to some select group of LNC members. Now, no matter how they might try to spin that, this is really clear. This isn't a bylaw that was passed in the 1970s. It was passed 4 years ago. And board self-evaluation is no longer a reason for executive session. And it's very easy to avoid legal quagmires. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything that's actionable. That's pretty easy. So I am going to ask either myself or through my attorney, Dr. Chuck Moulton, for this to be in the open, for this to be fully transparent. I'm positive that the motion is going to fail. And then non-confidential matters, we'll do a show on it where you guys could get to see the trial that you didn't get to see openly. And I would invite any witnesses that want to come onto that show to come onto that show. So what wouldn't just be me. But this should be in front of the membership, and you should be outraged that it is not in front of you. This is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I had a very reasonable pushback from a state chair earlier today, and I'd like to explain this to you. And this state chair asked me, how can you want the trial to be public when you objected to the publication of the 31-page smear campaign? Here's why. Because in a trial, I get to contemporaneously defend myself. A 31-page report that's just circulated to everybody is like having a front-page newspaper article that says you like to diddle sheep, and then 4 weeks later on the back page is your rebuttal. That's not the way due process works. I'm not scared of anything in that report. But the fact is, it's a 31-page report of which only about 6 pages of it deal with the actual charges against me. The other 25 have nothing to do with anything. That is why I didn't want it released. Anything that comes out during the trial that's in that report, I consent to have it released, as long as it's related to the charges. There are pages and pages in that report that have absolutely nothing to do with any of the charges against me. And if that were you, you would not want it released either. It has nothing to do with secrecy and everything to do with fairness. And when they voted on the charges, when they were debating them, they didn't even let me defend myself then. I'm not saying this is an illegal parliamentary move. But it is a shitty human being move. And that is to create a committee of everybody but me to go and debate the charges so you never get to hear my side of the story. And then you come out and vote on the charges without ever hearing the other side. Does that sound libertarian to you? Does that, now, while it might be parliamentarily legal, does that make it pass the due process sniff test? I don't think it does. I think the LNC already screwed the pooch really, really bad on due process from the moment the investigatory committee was created, because Angela allowed Adam Heyman to make that motion in open session. If the LNC was concerned about me suing them for libel, which I have not done, that train long left the station when Angela allowed Adam Heyman to libel me in public. This trial doesn't add anything to that. If I want to sue them for libel, I already have grounds. I don't need grounds. I already have them, and I haven't done it because that's not even on my radar. But the fact that she allowed Adam Heyman to already libel me in public, there should be no problem with this trial being in public. What are they scared? What are they scared of you hearing? If they are right, you all get to see it, and I get to be humiliated. If I'm able to put on a good case, then you all get to see it, and they get to be humiliated. If it's a draw, it's a draw. But there's another reason why it needs to be an open session. And the second choice is, though this isn't what I prefer, it needs to be recorded for the Judicial Committee. Because the Judicial Committee is an appellate body. They have to, and I'll answer your question potentially, Drugs for Robots, but maybe not. Right now, I'm kind of limiting myself to super chats because I don't want to get off my game. I already did. They are limited to review. If they don't have a record to review, then it's like we're retrying it all over again. And JC actions are an open session. So everything they tried to keep secret is going to come out anyway if they find against me. Of course, there's always the remote chance that they won't, but most people are pretty sure that the fix is in. I always hold out a glimmer of hope. I always do, because I changed. Other people can change. But if not, it's all going to come out in the JC anyway. They are forcing the JC almost to retry the case. Whereas if it's open and recorded, they could just review the record and we won't have to waste their time. But more importantly, you deserve to see this. You deserve to see this. What are they scared of? The second thing is they're not allowing any public comment. You hoi polloi, they don't want to hear your opinion. I have never seen so much denial of public comment. So why are they even bothering to give you the link? Tease? Who knows? But I can tell you my position. I want public comment. And I want this out in the open. And any part of the investigatory report that is validly part of the charges, meaning it's expressly laid out in the charges, I don't have any problem with that being public when I get to defend myself. My problem with it before is that it was so slanted and one-sided, and it libeled other people. That is why I did not consent to its release. None of the charges against me involve other people. So the libel against other people will not be a concern if they stick to the charges. And I will raise an objection anytime they try to have a witness say something that doesn't relate directly to the expressed charges and specifications, which is only about 6 pages of that report. Now, another problem with due process here is the time frames. See, normally, if you want, I can tell you what I would do if I was chair. of a very difficult situation. You try to work with the other side at negotiating and coming to mutually agreeable timeframes. And neither side gets exactly what they want. But you try to work on it. So I let Angela know how much time Dr. Moulton needed for an opening, which was an hour. She gave him 15 minutes. Does that seem like due process to you? And she just unilaterally decided how much time there would be for witnesses. There was no negotiation. There was no asking me how many witnesses did we have, how much time did we think we need. You know, that's what judges do in courts, and she knows that. And neither side gets everything that they want. They do a pretrial conference report and they say, well, we'd like this, we'd like this, we'd like this many days, or whatever it might be. And then the judge issues a trial management order. This was just all by fiat of Angela. That is not the way due process works. That is not the way fairness works. And I still have an unanswered question. It took me, I believe, 4 emails to get an answer even on how long opening and closing and all that would be. I'm supposed to get 30 days to prepare for trial. Yet I'm told a week before what the time frames are. How did I get my 30 days? And how did I get my 30 days when I actually did get a medical certification that I wasn't physically able to meaningfully participate in preparing my own defense until the 24th of October because of the severe case of COVID I had? It would have cost them nothing to postpone this for a couple weeks other than just malice. So basically, I got half the time. I got 15 days to at least meaningfully prepare, but only about 7 to even know time frames. And the question that remains outstanding that she still hasn't answered, and I'm not going to send it 4 times because I should only have to ask once, and I did. What about cross-examination? Whose time does that come out of? Because say I'm the first witness called. I might not be. I don't know. We haven't really decided that yet, Chuck. I think it's going to depend a lot on the openings, and we're going to do some things on the fly. But say I'm the first witness called. And then Chuck does his direct. And then the trial manager for the LNC, who is Mr. McGee, does his redirect. And say Chuck's direct is 15 minutes. And Mr. McGee takes 45 minutes and cross. Is my 60 minutes done? Do I not get to call anyone else? Now, the way I would handle it is this. I would say you have 60 minutes for your... I need more than 60 minutes, by the way. I think both sides. I was interviewed for 3.5 hours by the investigatory committee. Just me. And you think an hour is enough for witnesses? You think that's due process? I was interviewed for 3.5 hours and they still didn't even ask me about everything in that report, which is not due process either. This should have been a 2-day trial. It should have been Saturday and Sunday, and each side should have gotten as much time as they want. But let's go with this 60 minutes. If you're going to stick by that, I would say that cross cannot last any longer than direct did, and that time kind of goes into a no man's land. It doesn't get counted against anybody. Though 60 minutes is just way too short. This is a rush railroad job. And of course, I will be bringing all of that up in my appeal. This is a serious, serious matter. And what Angela said is like, but it's going to be 4.5 hours already. Well, Angela, you know, people over the years in working on my election, I've probably raised about $40,000. I think you can give 4.5 hours. But who chose the 5 o'clock Eastern time zone? Jack Blue, I'm not getting distracted with questions. I am working on monetizing my channel. If people want to ask me questions, I am doing it for super chats. I'm the dancing monkey right now. So 4.5 hours. Who chose the 5 o'clock time frame? I'm at 5 o'clock Eastern start time. I didn't. I wasn't even consulted. I wasn't consulted if I'd be available. What if that was like some huge vacation day I already had planned? Didn't care. That's not due process. That's not fairness. This should have been scheduled to start at noon Eastern on Saturday and last throughout the day. Or if you wanted to do it for just half days, have it 2 days. This time frame is not enough. And I agree with Chuck. We will present our whole case on my channel. So it's in their interest, if they don't want members to see what they don't want you to see, to just let it happen the way it should. Give us enough time. This should be split into 2 days. Those time frames for opening need to be tripled. Actually, I think all of the time frames except possibly for closing need to be tripled. The time frames for opening need to be tripled. The time frames for rebuttal and direct need to be tripled. You need to come up with some kind of rule for cross-examination. Closing probably just needs to be doubled. Or maybe 25% more. So, since I am not an attorney and, Chuck is much calmer than I am, he's going to be doing most of the great deal of the talking. So I actually, when I thought we would be able to get an hour for opening, which is not unreasonable, had prepared just a little bit that I was going to say. I'm not going to say it at the trial. I'm going to say it to you guys, though, because you deserve to know this stuff. You ready? I got to put on my old lady glasses. And I need some hair of dog for this one. Okay. I introduced Chuck Moulton in this one, which I'm not going to do here because he's in chat and that will happen. This is how I start off. First of all, this is a clear case of retaliation. I have done my job and some haven't liked it. Some agree I did my job, but they wish I had done it differently. That's always the case, isn't it? Sometimes hindsight is 20/20. But none of those causes rise to discipline, certainly not to removal. Dr. Moulton will be handling that portion, and I don't know what I was trying to say in that second part, so I'm skipping it. What I am going to talk about is basic due process issues. This process was doomed from the womb. Any of you who are Calvinists will know that that's the common expression used against Calvinists. Mr. Heyman made a public resolution, which our rules require to be discussed and debated in private, with a vague motion to be made in public. If we are going to be making accusations of interference, it should start there. I'm not claiming that Mr. Heyman did this intentionally, but it was still wrong. Then, the 3 persons originally appointed simply do not meet the qualifications under our rules for an investigatory committee. This is not an insult to those people. For most such committees, I would not be qualified. It is a case-by-case situation. If the LNC wanted to steer clear of even a whiff of an accusation of bias or retaliation, they should have handled this like they did the Joe Bishop Henchman investigatory report. It was comprised of party elders with experience that were not part of the LNC. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. 2 out of I think there was 3 people appointed that committee. There might have been 5. 2 of them weren't even people like I liked, but they were clearly qualified. Party elders widely respected throughout the party. None of the initial 3 pass the test of people who are well known throughout the assembly for their integrity and good judgment. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that any of these three men don't have integrity or have good judgment. I am saying that when you do something as serious as an investigatory committee, you make sure you get ones that the general populace of the assembly, of the party would agree with, not three of your own number that are all members of your own faction that already have an opinion on this matter, or at least negative vibes or negative inclinations towards the accused. It should be people who nearly everyone would agree are neutral. And thank you, Narcissistic. Yes, I am being thrown under the bus by yet another LNC, but as you can see this time, I'm handling it much better because I did frickin' absolutely nothing wrong. And I will say that forever. Get my glasses back on. Okay. So none of the three who were initially assigned passed this test. And the chair of the committee, who is Adrian Malagon, who is infamous throughout the party, who even the party chair called unelectable to any position, have been openly hostile to me, both before and after. People who have been openly hostile to the accused should be automatically disqualified from such a committee. It doesn't mean they would be disqualified from another similar committee, but it does mean they should be disqualified from this one, both publicly and on the list. First, I'm going to list the least of them and the one that causes me the most grief, and that is Pat Ford, who I have very fond feelings for even still. My feelings about Pat have never changed, but he began behaving in an adversarial fashion both before and after his appointment for reasons that I still do not know. Call me, Pat. Let's work it out, because I don't know what you're upset about, but your snubbing of me before you were ever appointed to this committee, you should have declined the appointment. That would have been the ethical thing to do, because you obviously had some kind of beef. I still don't know what the beef is. I still adore you the way I always have, but obviously you got some kind of beef you need to get off your shoulders. You should have declined this appointment. And your state chair should insist that you should have declined this appointment. Mr. McGee, once a supporter, but he has been an open opponent, forwarding a hostile email from a member to the public list. I mean, an extremely hostile email from someone who's been so hostile that I've had to block them. And this is no offense to Mr. McGee, but he's fairly new to the party. He's very well known in the Southeast. He's not well known everywhere else outside the Mises caucus. So he is not known throughout the party as possessing good judgment and integrity. That doesn't mean he doesn't possess those things. It just means that he doesn't have yet that status within the party. He's not a party elder. The qualification is reputation, not amongst an insular body like a caucus or the LNC, but nationwide. I have no beef with Mr. McGee. He was a generous donor to my campaign. But this has poisoned due process from the beginning. And I don't think I even need to say how hostile and nasty Adrian is to everyone who ever opposes him. Immediately disqualified, and he's the chair of the committee. The later addition of two members, a couple days later, after Adrian already got elected chair, does not cure this. Though those two additional men, who is Mr. Michaela and Mr. Nana, certainly do meet the qualifications, but ideally, these people should not be on the LNC. But if they're going to be on the LNC, without a doubt, Mr. Nikela and Mr. Nana meet these qualifications, as did the other person I suggested who was Bill Redpath. Then we have the publicly, it's been in several publications, both Reason Magazine and on Third Party Report, comments that came from that. I don't want to call it an illegal executive session, but I will call it an anti-libertarian executive session. But it was procedurally illegal because it went beyond its stated purpose. Do you remember when it said that the LNC must state all of its reasons for going into executive session, and that also applied to committees? Well, this committee, except me, which I dubbed the committee of the most, and that was just a joke, but somehow that took, they went beyond that. They assured me when they were going into executive session that all they were going to discuss was the charges against me. But it was stated in the meeting by the party chair that the real reason that I need to be removed isn't the charges against me. The real reason is that if they remove me, there's a mistaken belief that my standing in the derivative suit that I filed would be extinguished. Now, I don't know where they're getting this legal advice. Maybe it's right. I'll leave that to the attorneys. But that is encouraging fraud. The chair told the members these charges are just wrapping paper. The real reason is the derivative suit, which isn't one of the charges. And let me tell you, that is really bad. That is really, really bad. Because let's say my derivative suit does get past a motion to dismiss, and a judge hears that. A judge hears that the chair said the real reason you need to remove her because she exercised her fiduciary duty as a member of the board to file a derivative suit if she felt that the corporation was being injured. That's really bad. And every single LNC member watching this, because I know you are, you know she said that. You know she did. You can deny it up and down. If it gets to deposition phase, we'll see if you're willing to lie under oath. You know she said that. And she wasn't the only one. I know, and I'm not going to say how or who, because people blab to all kinds of people. You might guess, but you're probably not going to guess right. I know this was also stated amongst the investigatory committee, that we need to come up with reasons to remove her, but it's really because of the derivative suit. You don't want this to come up in court. That's the real reason. That alone can prove a retaliation claim. And no, the fact that my lawsuit came after the charges doesn't matter. You guys might not know, I sent a whistleblower email to Oliver Hall a month before these charges. So my concerns started way before then, and I do have a copy of that email. And I had been stating concerns to other LNC members for about a month and a half prior to these. So, but you want to know what these LNC members did? Any of you who know anything about the law will know you're in big trouble. Everyone, when you private message each other, you'll delete a message every once in a while. You either spelled something wrong, you stated it in a way that could be taken the wrong way. Well, Adrian Malagon and Kathy Yanuskavich went back months after my lawsuit was filed and deleted every single or nearly every single message they ever said to me. There is a legal hold on that kind of stuff. once a lawsuit is filed. Yet they went and deleted everything. That is illegal. That is absolutely illegal what they did. A message here or there, shit happens. But some of the smoking gun ones, I already screenshotted. Like the one admitting that certain people on the LNC or closely related to the LNC knew that this was going to happen, or most likely did and perhaps facilitated what happened with Colorado. But let's go back to the report. The choice of interviewees and a failure to ask me about things mentioned in the report and the extremely biased slant of the wording is another matter. Some people are noteworthy in the report by their absence. They never interviewed the person who submitted the Colorado electors, which was such a big deal to Colorado. I had nothing to do with it. That was Betty Rose Ryan. They never interviewed any past chair of Colorado with any experience in these matters. They never interviewed any of the electors. They never interviewed my husband. They never interviewed, because he's mentioned in the report, they never interviewed any affected Colorado voters. They never interviewed anyone from the campaign itself. They never made any inquiries to the Colorado Secretary of State. So as I've said, the fact that there were things mentioned that they never even investigated with me, and one of the requirements of a fair disciplinary process is that you hear the accused side of the story, they didn't even ask me about. So that's not a fair process. Doomed from the womb. Imagine my surprise to see things in the report that I had never been asked about. Further, there is extensive discussion about things not even included in the charges or specifications, which should not be the subject of anything in such a report, but give every appearance of being a Gish's gallop to hurl a bunch of irrelevant things in an incendiary fashion. The fact that the still illegal under our rules sanitized version is only 6 pages long, while the full report is 31 pages long, is very telling. Even taking away some administrative fluff like signature pages and cover pages and all of that, there are still 3 times the amount of pages that have nothing to do with the charges than have to do with the charges. Further, this trial is not about any kind of disagreement on strategy. It's not about Trump or anything to do with that. None of the charges have anything to do with that. And it's also not about your feelings about our chair, whether you love what she's doing or hate what she's doing. All of that is irrelevant. She has been openly hostile to me since the beginning of this matter in such an extreme way, not in a mild way, in an extreme way that she should voluntarily not chair this meeting. In fact, this meeting should be chaired by an outsider, not an LNC member. She is incapable of being impartial. A chair that cared about due process would do this, because what I am saying is reasonable. Even if the chair was like, no, I believe I can be impartial, in order to not even give the appearance of impropriety, an outsider should be chairing this meeting. I'm mentioning all of these things for the record. I can't mention it for the record because they're not giving me enough time in my quote-unquote trial, but it's preserved here. I will now leave the actual relevant charges, which are all that should be considered, and they all fall flat, which render the retaliation theory all the more likely. So that is what I was going to say to the LNC, and I know most of them will be watching this, so now you've heard it. Getting down to brass tacks and evidence and things like that, I am in the capable hands of Dr. Chuck Moulton. And and, pending a negative outcome, in the capable hands of the Judicial Committee. So that is pretty much all I have to say. I would encourage you to write the LNC and give them your feelings on the matter. Do not be rude. Be respectful. Even if you think some of them don't deserve it, be respectful and write them and say, as a member, you deserve to have public comment and you deserve for this trial to be in the open. If you write to them rudely, I disavow everything you say. Do not be rude. You catch more flies with honey. All right, I'm giving it a few moments. Again, I am trying to really stick to any particular rabbit trails, to even the most minor of super chats. So if there is anything else, and I just heard the buzzes, Chuck, you said you sent me some emails. I might need to add that to the bunch of documents I sent you earlier. But Chuck's or right now I think Chuck's going to make the motions. There's certain other motions we're going to make. They need to be made in open session because you're not allowed to make motions in executive session. Forget about the whole issue whether this qualifies for executive session or not. You can't make motions in executive session. So all of the motions need to be held ahead of time. So at least do show up for that portion. Because what I suspect is going to happen is they're just going to try to move into executive session and cut off any chance I have to make any kind of motions, either myself or through my attorney, which again is not due process. If you're absolutely convinced of the justness of your case, you're not scared to let the other side speak. All right, I think that's going to be it. Again, anyone who was just watching for this part, you can skedaddle at this point because the end's going to be a little bit more fluff. I'm going to stick up at the top here again. Whoa, I didn't mean that. I meant this. Subscribe. Hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, and I would really appreciate it. Still need my first YouTube member. Or you can become a patron at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And I need to make some graphics for these, but I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to my other two shows. They are not political. That is Pink Parliamentarian for really quick and dirty parliamentary tips, and also the show I just recorded earlier today, the latest episode of Jurassic Dictionary. With that, I wish you all an awesome evening, and I hope you have a good night. Bye-bye.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business, not because they want to